Hey, so can a judge be punished criminally for what they do in a courtroom? This has become a big question based on what was found out on Friday about the JQC in Georgia recommending a judge be removed from the bench. And one of the things that they found was that they believe this judge had broken the law and committed false imprisonment by throwing a witness in a divorce case into a holding cell without any kind of due process, without charging her with contempt or any kind of crime. So that has become a big question. Could this judge be prosecuted criminally for what she's done? So let me break it down for you. It's really interesting, kind of nerdy a little bit, but it's not a clear area of the law. So there's a lot to consider. So let's go ahead, come on into the murky water with me and let's swim around. All right. So there's really three categories of ways that judges can theoretically be punished. The first one is what I just talked about. So there's in every state and federally, there are different kinds of oversight for judges. There's the bar, they're lawyers, they're members of the bar, ethics commissions, judicial qualifications commissions, things like that. So there's always that area. And we know in this case with Judge Williams in Fulton County, the JQC has recommended that she be removed. We're still waiting to see what the Georgia Supreme Court does. And then, there's the bar, all those things. But we're not going to talk about that right now. All right. So the second category is civilly, meaning could you, if you were wronged by a judge for something that happened while the judge was being a judge, could you sue them? And generally speaking, the answer to that question is no, because they have a large amount of immunity. Now, we never say never in the law. Ask a lawyer a question, you're never going to get a straight answer because there's always maybes and I don't, know under these specific fact circumstances. But we're not going to talk about that either. We're going to talk about the third category, which is could she, Judge Williams, be prosecuted for false imprisonment for putting this witness in the holding cell for 45 minutes, which this Judicial Qualifications Commission panel found to be false imprisonment. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about whether or not what she did qualifies as false imprisonment because we're going to get way too into the weeds there. But let's talk about whether she could be at least prosecuted. Well, first of all, we know that there is no blanket judicial immunity for all judges when it comes to criminal liability. Certainly outside of a courtroom, a judge does not get to commit crimes with impunity, all right? Now, we all know that, is it likely that, a police officer or a prosecutor would treat a judge more kindly under those circumstances? Of course, that does happen. But so let's just say, we know outside the courtroom, judges are supposed to be treated the same way the rest of us are. All right, so now let's look inside the courtroom. So if a judge is sitting on the bench or presiding as a judge, they're in the courthouse, technically they are still able to be prosecuted. There is no blanket judicial immunity. And I went way down in the rabbit hole on Friday after I read this report. And it's difficult to say whether or not a judge could, number one, be prosecuted for something they're doing while sitting on the bench. And number two, could they claim immunity? Now, they're gonna claim immunity as part of their defense. As a defense attorney, I'm gonna have that judge, if she's my client, argue immunity, all right? Now, what's really cool is this, while very unusual, has actually happened recently. It's actually happened a couple of times recently. Once in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, I think it was, and once in Boston. So in Wisconsin, there was a judge, Judge Dugan, who has been accused of assisting a person to help them avoid some ICE agents, all right? And then it also happened, it's also been alleged to have happened in Boston with a different judge. Now, here's where it gets kind of wild. So this judge, apparently Judge Dugan, did some stuff in the courtroom that they alleged was wrongdoing, and then did some stuff outside of the courtroom once this hearing was over that helped this person allegedly evade capture, okay? I don't know all the facts of the one in Boston, but here's where it gets interesting. They charged her in Wisconsin with federal crimes. And they charged her right away, like within like a week or so, okay? And her lawyers had put forth this whole, she's immune. She was acting with judicial, she was within her judicial acts. It's when she was making these decisions. Well, the federal judge in that case said, nope, she does not have immunity. But what was weird about that is the argument that they made had to do with President Trump and Trump's allegations that he was entitled to immunity, which I thought was not really a great fit. But the judge in that case said, no, she's not immune. But for the most part, the wrongdoing that they were focusing on in this Dugan case was for stuff she did after she left the bench, all right? So she was helping this person after the hearing was over. That's really where the focus was. That's not the case in Fulton County. So that case, kind of weird. The case in Boston, I think it's still going on, but they waited a really long time before they charged this judge with crimes because they were waiting to see if any other body, the Judicial Qualifications Commission, the bar, the ethics, would they do anything to her? And they didn't. And so then they said, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and follow up and charge her criminally. So the reason I'm kind of going down this rabbit hole is to say the case with Judge Williams is different. She was on the bench, okay? And what she was doing, they even said in this report, while they said, yeah, this is false imprisonment, they also said she could have charged her or gone through the criminal contempt process. And by the way, this judicial commission, their report saying that she was committing false imprisonment while powerful with regard to removing a judge from the bench isn't an arrest warrant. That's not their decision. The prosecutors would have to put that to a grand jury to actually get a judge to be indicted for a felony. And so that kind of leads us to, well, what would happen in this case? Well, number one, the prosecutors would have to seek charges. It's under, if we went from a state standpoint, it's Fani Willis. Is she going to seek charges against this judge? Doubtful. Statute of limitations is 4 years. This thing with the witness in the divorce case happened in October of 2023. So she's got a couple more years to make that decision and get it past a grand jury. Okay. So we would have to assume, yeah, sure, she's gonna indict this judge. And then, like I said, any defense attorney, the first thing they're going to say if this judge got charged with false imprisonment is, this judge may have not done it right, but this judge had the ability to put this person in for criminal contempt. That was a judicial act. She is immune from criminal prosecution. She may have done it poorly, but this falls squarely under what judges do when they make these decisions. Therefore, she is immune from prosecution. That's certainly what I would argue. Okay. Now, last little caveat here. I do think it's possible that this judge could be charged federally for violating this witness's federal constitutional rights, okay? There is a criminal statute that is sort of like Section 1983 claims, when people claim that the government has violated their civil rights. There's a similar criminal statute for that. It's 242, I think. And they have a 5-year statute of limitations there. So it is arguably possible that Judge Williams could be charged federally for what she's done. But again, is a federal prosecutor really going to go after this judge for putting a witness in jail for 45 minutes? Doubtful. So that's how I land on, I doubt this would ever happen, but you can see it's not a clear path. This is kind of the crazy stuff that lawyers have to deal with, defense attorneys. There's no real clear indicator of whether or not she could win on an immunity argument. Do I think she would make it? Hell yeah. And the fact that she was sitting on the bench in her robe, and there's been findings in this judicial report that she could have held this girl in contempt. Yeah. Was it wrongdoing in my view that what this judge did? Absolutely. It's terrifying, actually. But I just don't see her getting prosecuted criminally for what she's done. So that's my take on it. Sorry to nerd out on you, but a lot of people had questions and I wanted to try to answer it as best I could. So I will keep you updated.